All right. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Morbid Symptoms podcast, and I'm just put the wrong screen in the background. That's all right. I'll quickly take care of that. There we go. So, hello, everyone. This is the Morbid Symptoms podcast, and I'm your host, Tara, and I'm joined with Anthony Medina, an aspiring sociologist, LA Tony, as I like to call him, LA to the bone. And we have a special guest, Nina, from the Nazi Party, as you may have heard online. So I just want to say that Nina's views are hers alone. They're not necessarily representative of the Morbid Symptoms podcast. Although we probably align. I'm not, not that I'm, but I'm very happy that she's here. I reached out to her and I was like, hey, I know you've had a bit of a week. But I'd like to do a podcast on this if it's okay. And of course, if you want to pop in and join, that would be fantastic. But I could understand if you didn't. So I was very happy when Nina came on. So how are you doing, Nina?
I'm very well. Thank you, Tara. And it's nice to see you, Anthony, and to be here. I mean, it's kind of funny. Like, I've been cancelled so many times before and really badly in 2018 that, like, I'm just kind of used to it. Like, I just, ride the tiger. It's all good.
So when did which is great. I mean, I'm happy that you're not, devastated. I'm sure that your detractors aren't very happy with it. I'm just going to quickly check on Twitter to see what we look like, since the video is, let's see. Oh, yeah. So it's good. So they can see you. I can't. So that's fine. Viewers at home don't need to know, but I just see this weird kind of, there's Nina's screen on my interface is like 100 different screens, but you can see her and I can hear her. So it's all right. Anyway, again, we are talking about, the left Stasi, I should put in quotes, left Stasi, allegedly, targets Nina Power for Pillory. And I have allegedly here, and my title was a bit more benign on YouTube because I thought, if people get wind of I'm doing the show, they'll probably try to get me. So I've been flying under the radar. Which is why, just some ground rules. I was thinking that we'll use Yahtzee because it sounds a lot like a very problematic regime from the 30s and the 40s. So we'll say Yahtzee. And when we're talking about certain people, I will say just this trans person. And the people who are watching this can see from the pictures. They can tell if I'm talking about a trans, as labels are trans man or trans woman, so that we don't get in trouble for misgendering anybody on YouTube. Anyway, so for people who get upset about that, I'm sorry, but we have to, that's just the way it is, baby, for the time being. Anyway, Anthony, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's
You're not gonna be yawning, are you? Because if you yawn, it sends a signal that you're bored, and then I'm gonna have to get angry with you later.
No, I'm hyped up. I'm hyped up. I'm glad to partake in this, and I'm glad to meet Nina today because I kept seeing her on Twitter the last few years, and I was like, wait, who's Nina Power? And then, like, when you showed the picture, I was like, oh, that's who that is. I was like, yeah. I've seen her. Now that you're here, I can ask you, wait, was your name Nina Byzantine on Twitter at one point or something?
I don't think so.
Oh, maybe that's someone else.
Okay. Well, that's the important question. Let's get that now that that's out of the way. But it was so funny because I was so mad at myself because I knew that Luke Turner, since I'm not a big fish at all, probably would block me. So I thought, okay, I got to get this right. But I messed up and I said, I called you Nina Turner instead of Nina Power. And I don't know if it's because his name is Turner, because there's also Nina Turner in the US, but I was like, well, whatever, I'm sure. But I couldn't redo it because he had already blocked me. So I was like, okay, it's just up there, but whatever. Anyway, So we're going to talk about, for those of you who may not have noticed, who aren't familiar. Well, I don't know, Nina. Do you want me to give my overview of what's happened, or do you want to do that for yourself since you're here? Just kind of a general.
Why don't you do it? Because it's kind of interesting for me to see how you saw things, and then if there's something like I can correct or whatever, like add.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so let's see. How am I going to do this? I'll do this way. Okay, Tony. Okay, there you go. So yes, lefty Stasi, target Nina Power, and I really had. I think that maybe people who are critical of who would call themselves gender critical or ultras or just, some people would call me a transphobe, but I say no, I'm a trans realist, so don't misgender me. A trans realist is somebody who knows that trans women are all male, so that's basically what makes you a trans realist. Anyway, which is a fact, but I don't want to get too far on that. But anyway, I think that seeing people get canceled and monstered, and this trial by media and this kind of mob rule and whatnot, I just think that, I don't know if it was just this is the last straw, but when I figured out what was going on, because ever since October 7th, I've used X lists. I never used lists before, but ever since then, I have a certain list because I'm just like, okay, if I just want to go on X for a bit, I don't want to get too triggered. So only every once in a while do I go on the quote unquote for you feed. And I saw the thing on from Compact, and I was like, well, this is weird. Why would you announce that somebody is resigning? I could see if you had hired somebody, or maybe they're retiring or something. And I thought, well, this is weird. But I was just like, well, I don't know. Maybe they had a falling out, or maybe this is just something that Compact does. I don't know. And then I started seeing a couple of just things like, the Nazi, the Yahtzee stuff for YouTube. And I was like, I don't know her personally, but I never got that vibe from Nina. And I was like, all right. Yeah. And then I started to look at the bios of the people who were doing this. And I was like, okay, now I get it, because you've been fairly critical and openly critical of what we call like gender ideology, and the kind of some people call it the alphabet mafia, or the protection around this idea, that you can't, anybody that questions anything about this new take on who's a woman and who's a man and what this means is somehow, either you totally accept it and fall in line and affirm all these new interesting norms, or you're a transphobe, you're a fascist, you're a racist, you're a Nazi, you're this, that, and the other. And so I was like, okay. So when I started seeing, especially Sophie Miller, and I can't remember the other person's name, on the right, I was like, oh,
Sophie Lewis, I think.
Yeah. Sophie and I was thinking, okay, this is making a bit more sense. But this Luke Turner character, I'd never heard of before. But looking at his picture now, I'm like, I would not want this person, on any kind of jury that's ruling on something that's going to affect my life, either officially or socially. But anyway, which is why I add the tagline, abolish her like she is the family, because both Sophie and the other person on the right, who I'm going to have to find out their name in a minute, EM something, have written about abolishing the family. And one of them is clearly trans, and Sophie is married to a trans person, she would say trans woman. And so then it started to make sense. And I looked at I want to call him Luke Perry. Sorry, Luke Perry, rest in peace. Luke Turner's bio, and I saw the he, him, and whatnot. And I thought, okay, well, this is weird. And I just kind of looked into it a bit, and I thought, well, I'm looking at what they considered these smoking guns, and I just wasn't. Yeah, I just was thinking like, well, this looks like just, people bantering, or, not suitable for, just kind of two people talking crap. And that I knew from my experience that if all my text messages and chats were all of a sudden at somebody's disposal who wasn't a fan of mine, they could make any kind of story about me. and especially with the being a TERF or whatever you want to call it. Those of us who commiserate, we often will pretend that we're everything that they accuse us of being. So we're kind of going back and forth on a group chat and been like, oh, well, you know me, I'm just a big, Yahtzee, TERF, and racist and all that stuff. And if someone was trying to get me, they could say, look, see, she admitted it. She says it right there that she's, all these things. So anyway, yeah. So I thought, okay, something else is going on here. And I read his Luke Turner. Apparently there was a case that well, you know this, but that Daniel Miller knew brought a suit against him for defamation, and he brought a countersuit against you guys for harassment, and that the judge finally made a ruling on this. And my understanding is he didn't rule for anybody's favors. Basically, like, didn't rule that Daniel had not Daniel, so that Luke Turner had legally defamed you guys, and also ruled that there was no that you hadn't harassed him. So nobody won, but yet you guys are, since Daniel brought the case and you joined him, are responsible for paying a lot of Luke's legal fees, and he had a lot of expensive attorneys, and so he's using this. He's framing this as like a victory. So he won, and has proceeded to release all kinds of text, all these chats and whatnot that were part of that you guys provided for the court case. Very, let's just say, curating them as an artist might, who's trying to present a certain picture. And it just seems that he seems like he's not going to be satisfied until he tries to ruin you guys completely. Is the impression that I got. I don't know if I've gotten anything too wrong so far. No,
I mean, I think that's pretty accurate. I mean, he lost his we lost our defamation claim on serious harm, which is very hard to prove, and it's a difficult question in the internet age. There's like a weird noise going on in all this, but,
is that your noise, Anthony?
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on.
Your traffic. It's a heat wave. It's a heat wave where Anthony is.
Yeah.
Not where we are. Well, at least not where I am. And so
no, definitely not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how can I explain it? So I mean, in the newspaper age, like let's say someone wrote an article about you. They said, last week Tara killed 3 dogs and she's a terrible person, right? Like, imagine, I
usually only kill 2, but yeah, go ahead.
And even if this is like a small newspaper, you could say, well, okay, potentially probably like 5,000 or 10,000 people read this, right? Okay, and it was clearly, okay, A, it wasn't true, and B, it was said to make you look bad, right? And you could say, well, it was this newspaper, this article, this publication, right? Mm-hmm. And you could definitely point to the thing that had caused you serious harm. Like, let's say then someone said, well, you can't work for me anymore because I heard you killed dogs or something, So you'd be able to say. The thing about the internet age is, like, every tweet is treated as a publication. So rather than the newspaper article, it's like you have to prove that this particular tweet caused this particular harm, which is very, very difficult to do, because how it works is like this kind of miasma of bad feeling. I tried to write, I don't know if you had a chance to read my piece that I wrote earlier this evening.
I skimmed through it, yeah.
And I mean, I didn't really get into this bit, but I mean, the other thing is a lot of the way that these activists, I think there's a lot going on there. We can talk about who or what they are and what they're doing, but they use anonymous open letters. There's loads of open letters about me online that are anonymous. They send anonymous emails. They work behind the scenes. They have dossiers. They have, several people working on this stuff. And a lot of the most defamatory stuff about me in particular was all anonymous, and all Luke had to do was to say it wasn't me, because it's a civil case, right? So the disclosure that we give, like the chats that we gave, and I tried to explain why we gave the chats, because we wanted to show that we weren't talking about him. There was nobody planning to harass him, you know what I mean? Like this, because this was his argument, that there was some kind of conspiracy of people trying to attack him. So we gave them the tweets. The private messages, the WhatsApp. It's been a long day.
Right.
And
No one's going to judge you. Not here.
In order to say, like, look, we weren't doing this. Like, we weren't talking about you. I must admit, I'm slightly surprised to see them online. But at the same time, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. I think I'm a bit naive. Like, I forget that these people really have a mission, right? Their mission is to try to destroy people. They're really trying to get people out of public life. They're trying to ruin their reputation and so on. And people are like, well, why did you bring this case? Like, aren't you going after him? And it's like, the moment we filed, he counterfiled, and we could not get out of this case. And everything was on his terms because he had these incredibly expensive lawyers, Mishcon de Rea, this like silver something, whatever you call them, big law firm, and so we were kind of trapped. And
that Shia Labeouf money.
Well, yes, I mean, he claimed that
allegedly
some of the money, came from this Hollywood actor. But the interesting thing is, in the meantime, because this stuff has been going for 5 years, ridiculously, Shia Labeouf has been kind of cancelled. Or is facing some kind of trial himself in relation to charges brought by FKA Twigs, like this pop star, for emotional and various kinds of abuse. I think she alleged that he gave her a sexually transmitted disease and that he was abusive. I mean, certainly we know from his own account that Shia Labeouf is a bit of a wild card, right? He's had various run-ins with people, like, you know what I mean? Like, he's kind of all over the place, right? So, and Turner is very worked very closely with him and is very associated with him. But the moment there was any allegations, Turner deleted Shia Labeouf's existence in this completely Stalinist way.
Oh, did he? Oh, okay, I didn't realize that.
He didn't put out a statement. He didn't say, "Oh, my dear friend is going through a difficult time and I'm standing by him in his hour of need," which is one option. Neither did he say, "Oh, I have to sever ties with this person because, I'm cancelling it." He'd said nothing and then just deleted him from site. I'm like, wow, okay.
Dude. Okay, because that actually, I was wondering about that because when I saw, because I didn't know until, because I before I remembered that I had your email, I was like, I reached out to somebody who I knew you. And I was like, what's going on? And who is this Luke Turner dude, And he kind of said, oh, he worked with Shia LaBeouf. I'm like, Shia LaBeouf? And I'm thinking like, well, he's kind of the pot calling the kettle black. Like he's so, if he's doing the guilt by association thing.
Right.
But I didn't realize he dropped him like a hot rock after he became problematic.
Right. I mean, and this is the thing. I mean, it's like the hypocrisy of these tactics. It's like, you once spoke to this person who once wrote a book saying this. This whole thing. I mean, I was really. I mean, it's so tiring.
Hold on just a second, Anthony. You have to stop yawning, yo.
I'm not yawning.
I just saw you.
No, I didn't yawn.
Okay, well now you're trying to gaslight me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even notice. I'm just laying here.
I'm just saying, like, because I'm just saying that you're also a single dude, and when you lay like that, it looks like you have a huge chin. Which is fine. I mean, if you don't care, I don't care. But you got to think about what people are looking at you.
Dude, I'm freaking
and
tall.
You're a handsome man.
I'm tall. I need to lay.
Okay, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Take a look about what people see, and then I'm not going to mention it anymore. I just want to say. Right. Okay, I care about you, yo, and we got to give Nina respect. Anyway, yeah. So while we're on that, so I just there we go. Here, all the traffic. So anyway, I was so fed up with this crap that I really had a lot of fun when I was putting this together. And I want to say that Nina had nothing to do with my presentation here, and really either did Tony. It's all me. So if anybody has a problem with any slide, they should just take it up with me. I live on that. You can call me any name you want. It's cool. And I'm not affiliated with any institution. So unless you can figure out who my husband is and try to convince him to throw me out of the house, there's a limit to what you can do. And my even though these people want to abolish the family, my kids wouldn't want to leave me. So anyway, there you go. Even though we don't, they're not happy with me all the time. Anyway, and I had some fun because it's just like, the idea that you're a Nazi or Yahtzee, clear Yahtzee, such a huge Yahtzee. it just kind of reminded me of this. It's like, well, you know, if we have her text and the words in there, then of course she must be, you know, this huge Yahtzee Nazi person. Just kind of remind me of how they would, you know, determine who's a witch or possessed or something, you know. And yeah, and also just that it's crap because, of course, given how this turned out and the ramifications of it, it's like, you know, it's really kicking someone while they're down, which I also don't like. But anyway, so here's Luke Turner. And like I said, I had no idea who this person was. And now I wish I didn't know who he was. I mean, good God. Anyway, sorry, I have to pull down this brand thing. So anyway, I thought, okay, I just Googled him. I was like, I think I said, I don't know what it was. I can't remember. It was like his name and something else. And this is the first thing that popped up. And so I thought, well, okay. And so here it says that the co-founder of the He Will Not Divide Us roaming art project got into an intense Twitter battle with artist Daniel Keller, who defended artist Deanna Havas, liking a controversial meme. This is all it takes to get Luke upset, is to like a meme he doesn't like. So it goes on. Luke Turner, an artist who regularly works with Shia Labeouf. This article is from 2018. I think it's September 2018. And again, anything I put online, I'll put the links to it in the video description later after the show, and you can look at it and make up your own mind if you think I was being a bit cutesy with what I share. So let's see. So he's withdrawing from the Athens Biennial. Or Biennale, I don't know. In an open letter, Turner said he would not be participating in the event due to the abuse of Daniel Keller, another participating artist, the nature of Keller's work, and the organizers' collective failure to take any decisive stand against the abusive behavior of another of the invited guests. So apparently he has an issue with Daniel Keller's work. And okay. And then it goes on. Turner and Keller had exchanged a heated debate on Twitter, and Deanna Havas, another artist, had liked an image tweet at Turner featuring the controversial and sometimes alt-right internet meme, Pepe the Frog. Sorry. Sorry. Okay, so yeah. Stealing Labeouf, Ronco, and Turner's work, He Will Not Divide Us. Okay, so I think you get the thing here. So so of course I clicked on the link to the heated debate, and here is the meme that he was so upset about. So here's the Pepe the Frog thing, and someone, of course, He Will Not Divide Us was I guess part of Turner and Labeouf, and there's a woman, I don't know what her name is, art project.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the guy in the back is Shia Labeouf, like running after the frog who stole his flag, and then you have like some drones in the background. But apparently Deanna liked this tweet, and that really upset Luke. Luke was mad.
Yeah, I mean, to the extent that he basically like ruined her career. I mean, you know, he went after her she was giving a talk at Yale, like gallery shows were like pulled. She was basically like completely denounced and trounced and trashed. And, you know, he really messed her up. I mean, and I think a lot of this is like very psychological, right? In this case, it's like a woman laughing at a man, like, you know, he feels it like a kind of knife to the chest or something. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm glad that I like to laugh because
yeah, but it's such an
I know what you mean. Yeah.
You know, like this kind of insane slight, like you're an artist making public work, like you're literally making controversial work in public. Like you were going to get some pushback, right? Like you were going to get people and, you know, responding to your work in all kinds of ways. Like that's the nature of doing anything in public, right? Like, and for this reaction, this kind of overreaction to this woman who's a funny artist, you know, like a nice woman, and like to go after her. And then so people were defending Deanna, like or actually trying to de-escalate the situation, right?
Anyway, so I don't know Daniel Keller. I only have these tweets because of the link in that article. Again, so he's, you know, and so again, don't want to stir up any old wounds here. But so I looked through, I'm not going to share the whole thread, but if people want to look at that article, they can look at that exchange. And again, from what I gather, it's like an escalade. So they're anti-Semites, they're fascists, so there's some that. And he's saying, both DC, which I'm assuming is Daniel Miller, and Deanna Havas, who liked the controversial meme, are Jewish as well, but no one ever mentions that. And he also says, dude, this is muddying the waters. Luke has set Shia Labeouf, Shia's tweet deck to repeat the slide daily. As we all know by now, the Walker director is also Jewish. So every day he was having Shia Labeouf's Twitter account was saying the Walker Art Center is platforming anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And apparently the person who's the director of it is Jewish. Deanna's Jewish. Both Daniels are Jewish, but apparently that doesn't matter.
No, I mean right, because he's not using anti-Semitism to mean what everyone else means by it, right? Which would be, prejudice towards Jewish people, right? Or something along these lines. He's using it to mean someone who's made me angry and must be destroyed. Like the word does not correspond to its natural meaning, its normal meaning. And it's but what people like this know is that these words, anti-Semite, Nazi, fascist, neo-Nazi, whatever, TERF, are very powerful words, or racist. These are words that basically, if they're attached to you, like black magic, like bad magic, they will people will
there's a taint,
we'll see you as being like affected. And actually we kind of thought that this stuff was dying down because the massive overuse of fascist and neo-Nazi to describe people who are like literally nothing to do with any of these positions. We thought it had been played out, you know what I mean? Like,
no, I was also like, Jesus, like it just came out of, I mean, guess I hadn't followed that, but and then when I started looking into it, I was like, what the frick? But anyway, just to wrap this one part up, apparently people weren't believing Daniel that he was Jewish, and so this poor man, I'm sure he's fine. He puts up like his 23andMe results. And there's like the receipt. He's like 99.9. So he's 99.3% Ashkenazi Jewish.
Wow.
And still, I think there are people. It just becomes like it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter.
It's just as. And I was thinking this also because I was having this exchange with this person I'll just call Red, a few hours ago, and I was surprised. I was actually kind of happy because I thought, well, okay. I put out the thing that we're going to do this show, and I knew that was the kind of thing that, some people are still, even though the likes aren't private, people are, a bit nervous to whatever. But I got a couple of DMs like, oh, I'm glad you're doing this, and this is so crazy, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, and there's a couple people who gave their assessment, and I was like, oh, can I use that? And I go, and they were kind of like a silence. I go, don't worry, I'm not going to put your name or your Twitter handle on it. I get it. I'm not going to, so it was kind of, so anyway, so I was, and this person was just like, I'll show you because, and so it's like, oh, she's a Nazi, this and that, and I'm Yahtzee. And I was like, okay, well, I'm open-minded. Give me the evidence why you think the evidence that she's actually, in fact, like, what does that word mean to you? And the evidence that she is one. And this person, let me see if I can share my screen. The first was just like blah blah blah, something about the text message, and I'm like, we already covered that. That's not proof of anything. So you're gonna have to give, if you want me to take this claim seriously, you're gonna have to, provide me more than that. And let me see if let me share my screen because you shared 2 articles of yours, and like as if these were smoking guns. And to me, I'm like, this actually exonerates her. So I don't know what. What you're talking about.
I mean, what do words mean, Tara? Do they mean anything? I mean, like, I think we have to understand that this is not about the meaning of words, right? This is about power and who wields it, right? Okay. I remember this piece. I spent a long time reading Victor Klemperer, right? He was a great Jewish writer who was hiding during the Nazi period. He was married to a Jewish German woman, Jews were not allowed to read literature during this period. So people would smuggle him books and newspapers. And he was a kind of etymologist, a philologist, really, actually, I should say. And so he's studying language, and he writes this amazing book called The Language of the Third Reich, in which he analyzes the transformations of language under the Nazi regime. And he says the most incredible things, very insightful. He says things like, there's no longer a separation between written and spoken language. All writing is written to be shouted, right? Like you know, everything becomes like a kind of rally speech. He talks about particular prefixes, like the D, like the Nazis are kind of trying to get rid of, like, or you know, abolish certain things, and it shows in the language. And he looks at these kind of hygienic euphemisms. Anyway, it's a fantastic book. And I was trying to write this piece, indeed, to actually, but I think this piece is a failure. I have to say, I think this is not a very good piece by me in the end, even though it took a long time to write. I was trying to look at the language of around Trump and trying to make any comparisons really between what Klemperer is saying. But actually, what I realized after this is that Klemperer's analysis applies far more to left authoritarianism than it does to Trumpism and the playful thing that was actually going on there. And what has happened, and Angela Nagel makes this point in her book Kill All Normies, is that actually art and culture and this kind of playfulness moved to the right. The left became censorious, the left became authoritarian, and they're the ones who seek to control language. So that's why they're still using this black magic spell. Oh, we can call, it doesn't matter what evidence, they don't have any evidence. Like me joking after being called a Nazi 7,000 times, or like I'm a Nazi, lol. Like, I mean, it's not proof of,
as a Yahtzee would, yes.
Yeah, I mean, you know, proof of me.
You're not. I see right through you. You're very sneaky.
Oh,
you know.
I'm very I'm like,
just before you continue on, I want to say that the person who this was evidence, and basically what he was like is like basically saying that you would read this. I mean, I'm paraphrasing him. But it's like that this isn't a critique of it. This is because you learn from this how to like code and like hide your Nazism. I mean, it was batshit crazy. And I'm like, let me get this straight. She writes a review. She uses this man's work who was a German Jew, philosopher and the other things, and about how the use of language in the Third Reich. And she's using that to see what insights there are about what's going on now. And to you, this is evidence that she's a Nazi. I was like, dude, I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. And then he shares with me the Guardian article you wrote about how canceling or not letting the EDL like have their rally was the wrong way to go. And of course, this is like what you meant. And I don't tell, and then we'll see if Anthony wants to chime in here and all before we move on. Is that this is totally like the I don't know if it's a dialectical reversal or what's going on here, but this idea that now if you act that anybody that cares about, and I've had this myself several times about free speech or due process doesn't really care about that. They're just a Nazi or a sexist or a transphobe or a racist or whatever. Because I remember when I was taught when the Russell Brand thing was going on, that's the first time half the TERFs turned on me. And it was like, I was like, this just seems, there's, you know, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And people are like, I'm just like, this seems like a trial by media. It seems orchestrated. It seems like really, let's wait and see. And like, oh, you're a rape apologist. You're a misogynist. You don't care about women. You don't care about that poor 16-year-old and all like this. Well, that's like this moral panic. And I was like, yeah, clearly. Yeah, I couldn't possibly actually think that due process is important. You know?
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. I'm like, okay, so she's saying that because she's, you know, the idea that this is the wrong way to go to combat this, you know, this group and the broader milieu that it's coming from. You make the argument that this cancellation, this whatever, is the wrong way to go, and ergo, you actually support them. And I was like, dude, I hate to wait till you hear about Noam Chomsky because you're really gonna freak out.
Right. I mean, it's not about consistency. It's not about principles. I mean, a lot of what's going on is also a kind of projection. These are people who haven't really come to terms with the fact that they also have a shadow side, that they also have bad thoughts. They probably do have, you know, stuff in chats that they wouldn't want people to see. And they, instead of kind of dealing with that and dealing with ambivalence and ambiguity and animosity, and the fact that sometimes we don't like other people, we don't like things because they want to be seen as good people, they can't reconcile these tensions within themselves. So they think, well, these things must be in the world, they must be in other people, right? Like, there's no evil in me, but there's evil in this woman.
Yeah.
Over here.
Yeah, Anthony, do you want to say anything? You want to jump in and say anything so far?
Yeah, I would love to ask you, Nina. So to that inclination of policing language that you feel, I guess if you'd like to call them the left, has come to use, as a millennial, I'm 32 years old, so I got to see the sort of progression of sort of like, as a millennial, I feel like there was a general sense of like, let's save the world, let's be the most sort of progressively minded people in our language and in our aesthetics and in our behavior. But I felt like, especially as somebody who was part of socialist organizations and stuff like that, as I came up as a young adult, I feel like that became in place of sort of like any sort of socialist construction, any sort of building of a socialist alternative. Instead, it became a deep sense of moralizing that has now become like, if you don't sort of behave in that sort of utopic aesthetic of moralizing in that way, you're cast out. Do you feel like that's what you're getting at? Is that what the inclination is, or the implication?
I that's definitely a huge part of it. I think I wonder if sometimes this is as a consequence of almost kind of failure, like, because class politics, actually doing the hard work of organizing, union organizing, and actually you do have to deal with people with different opinions, right? Like, not everyone is going to have the exact same liberal opinion that you have because you went to college for 3 years, and
actually, I read Gender Trouble, but I didn't like it. Go ahead. Sorry.
Of course, and I also critique Butler, so I'm evil because
she's a devil woman.
How dare I critique Butler? But how to put it? Like, it just becomes easier to turn on yourself, like oh, this guy did a microaggression, like, oh, you did the wrong dance, like, rather than confront the reality of like economic inequality in a crumbling empire, right? And actually point to real, genuinely material disparity. It's just, I don't know, it's so lazy. And of course, everybody wants to be liked. Everyone wants to be a good person. You know what I mean? Like, nobody wants to be hated. Like, it's horrible to be hated. Like, let me tell you, it's like really
like, although you kind of, I don't know about you, because I never had the platform that you've had, but it's kind of the first few times you're called something, you're like, Jesus, because literally when you're slowly trying to like what, like someone says something doesn't make sense, you're trying to get clarification or trying to point out a contradiction or something, and they just like immediately like you're evil, or they very, like you said, like Anthony said, they personalize it. Oh, you must have a terrible life and no friends and blah blah blah. And I'm like, what? I'm like, are you 12? I don't understand. I mean, not that my 12-year-old does that. But yeah, I wonder if it is kind of a weird defense mechanism. It's like, we can't, any of the big structural things are kind of like closed off, but I can cancel, that evil woman, I can get her, and then feel like it's some sort of victory. It's bizarre. And I don't know if it's the people, and they actually, I don't know. But I was kind of a bit surprised at, there was some pushback. There's some people that just will come on going, but I was a bit surprised how quickly they turned off, especially Sophie Lewis, because usually you didn't just get the huff, you got the huff and the puff, and then they would block. So first it'd be like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, and then the kind of name calling, and then maybe like you're, a weak, terrible person, and then they would like block you. But it was literally just the huff and nothing else. And I think that also maybe it says this is dwindling it down a bit. And I did see again, because they blocked me so quickly that I hadn't had a chance to, and I can't remember the password on my account. So I wanted to be like, and so I wanted to see like what the general response was. But I did see some of them. Like, some people were getting like the thing, but not what you might expect. I think maybe a couple of years ago. So there are people, of course, that are, stirring the pot and whatnot. But I was just like, because again, like, you saw the video that I made. I just could give a crap anymore. I'm just so tired of this stuff. And, some of my, and I didn't start off this way. It's been like years in the trenches of being like, I'm not even gonna, once I clock someone as a total TRA or like totally off the reservation with this, I'm like, okay, I'm going to then it's just about shame. Well, not shame as in like cancel them, but just kind of ridicule or just kind of be like, seriously. And I was surprised how there wasn't as much pushback as I thought. There was a bit, but not a lot. But again, I was like, so who knows? But yeah, so we'll see, I guess. And it's hard. I'm sure you don't want to be a guinea pig another time around to see how long this lasts. Because I saw some people, again, I didn't go too much, but there seemed to be quite a few people who were saying like, this is, come on, this is ridiculous. This is just, and then of course people don't like that. And even when people just make a general tweet about it, not like say this particular person, but just kind of say something in general, commentary about what's going on, and people would be like, well, didn't you see the tweet? And didn't you see that you didn't read the transcript? And, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, actually did. And I think so again, it's this inability. I don't know if they're not used to the pushback, or they're used to people being more cowed. So I don't know, because it was really like, it's like, did you really think, and maybe they did because the last 10 years or so, or last maybe 8 years, there's more people, even who are not anonymous online, who are saying like, please, or also being critical. I'm not going to ask you to talk about Compact, but also being critical of that decision. And I'm like, well, good, because it's like, and this is a new podcast, we don't have a very big audience, but I'm like, people have to stand up to this.
Yeah.
To be like, and it's also, and then people will be like, and I don't have to be in love with Nina. We don't have to form a perfect circle with our politics and our ideology for me to be like, this is crazy. This is not, this is just, I'm sorry. And I don't like bullies. And I'm just like, enough of this. I'm like, this is just, yeah, I'm like, there has, even if it's just from a small account or a podcast, to be like, I see what's going on here, and I'm going to say what I think it is, and I don't care what you call me. I'm standing by this, and it's just because it's, not because I'm some sort of, perfect person, but I've just had enough, Well, and before, when I saw this, it was one of the things I kept on thinking, oh, if I had a podcast, I'd say X, Y, and Z. I'm like, oh, now I kind of have one. So I'm like, and I'm happy that I have Tony, who's also brave, maybe braver than he should be.
Thank you. Well, I want to ask Nina something. Nina, do you think that this sort of wielding of, I don't know what to call it, progressive aesthetics, do you think that is also a way for a career, like people that maybe in your kind of job, in your kind of field, rivals, to remove people that they want to take? Hey, she may be getting paid more than me, he may be getting paid more than me, he may have this job at this magazine, I want that job, so let me use this shit I can cuss, right?
Yeah, you can, but let's keep it to a minimum, huh? Because of the YouTube. And some people don't like the cussing, yeah? So we got to keep it, I mean, every once in a while, but let's not go crazy.
Okay. Well, like, do you think
no C words?
Do you think that's also part of it then? Do you think that's also part of it? People, bad actors using this as a way to sort of like take certain people out of the sort of career that they may be in to like get their position?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think we have to think about it as an economic question, right? Because if you kind of overproduce graduates, right, you've got all of these overeducated people, like there aren't enough jobs, everybody has economic insecurity. I've transcended economic insecurity. I no longer care. I'm going to live on buttons and air. Fine. I have
She became a Buddhist, even though maybe she didn't want to. So it's like, I have no attachment to worldly possessions.
Right. I'm sort of like reluctant enforced audit. But we stroke
compassionate detachment. Yeah,
absolutely. But yeah, for sure. So there's this kind of, and also the attention economy, right? So it's like, if you know that people, you can use these words to kind of damn people and get them out of the way, because human beings are rivalrous, like envy is a huge, if you read René Girard, this great kind of theologian, lots of people have been drawing on his work in recent years because he talks precisely about envy being this kind of fundamental driver that people don't really want to admit because it's kind of painful. Like nobody wants to admit that they're envious of someone else.
I'm envious.
Or and that we're kind of mimetic, so we kind of copy each other. We want what other people have. Like so a lot of our desire comes about because we see other people having something, and that's partly what desire is. There are also good desires as well, though, like desires that stem from natural good feeling, like for example the desire of a mother to take care of her child, right? Like this is not, you don't need to copy someone in order to feel that desire. Do you know what I mean? Right. But anyway, but in the world of competition for jobs and attention and the internet and whatnot, this stuff is very powerful. It's like a drug, right? And I think that I think for a lot of maybe millennials, especially, I mean, I'm Gen X, so like everything is funny to me, and like we kind of gave up before we got going, so like we're this kind of great loser generation,
But we're coming back now.
I don't know. I think I'm not sure I'm coming back, but
Well, oh please, you're gonna rise like a phoenix. Because you're my idol now, yeah. Because I usually put my hair up because I get a bit warm because I think I'm premenopausal. I'm not sure. And also because I'll play with my hair, but I thought no, and because I thought in honor of Nina, I'm also going to have the going on here.
See, there you are. That's my niece. But yeah, I think this kind of like, how to put it, this sort of these tactics, right? Like, so if you're a millennial, like, so the Gen X was like, you can't lose if you don't play, right? Millennials, I think, on the other hand, were like, no, you have to do all this stuff in the vain hope that you might one day get a job, and you have to borrow all this money, and everything, this kind of horrible competition. And of course, in those conditions, people are going to think, hey, well, if I can take out my rival, like I literally know situations where people complained about people in order to get their job, not because they really thought that this person had committed a racism or a sexism, but they just wanted them out of the way. And they could see this mechanism was very powerful, So of course, people are responding to real economic incentives and real fear, right? And that doesn't justify it. In fact, it precisely doesn't justify it, but it might be part of the explanation. But I think it's definitely like this. Cancel culture is a lot about, I think, getting rid of your rival.
Well, and I think it's just kind of the survival of the fittest, maybe like the really kind of perverted market logic that you have to compete not just in your merit or your capacity, but also like the cultural capital Olympics and the virtue Olympics and I'm not sure what else. But yeah, I think it's just, I think that, and it's also quite, I think it speaks to your character that you can also focus on the more structural impetuses of why people are doing this again. And I was a bit remiss because you mentioned before we go on to the other people who seem to be very keen, very convinced that very keen to perpetuate this notion that you're some sort of stealth Nazi thing. But before that, you mentioned that you were canceled in 2018. Was that about your stance against was that about your stance for free speech, or was there something else? What was your first cancellation?
Well, originally it was about, I was actually a member of the Labour Party in the UK at that time. I was like a big fan of Corbyn. I was very involved in this group called Defend the Right to Protest, and very pro kind of freedom of expression, freedom of association. I'm still very pro those things, by the way. But other people don't seem to be in the same way. Anyway, but I was a member of the Labour Party. I came across this transcript that was I can't remember where it was published, but it was Labour Party members, female Labour Party members, that were basically being interrogated for because they wanted to discuss the proposed changes to the Gender Recognition Act. Right? This is a very democratic thing. It's like, oh, there's a policy. Can we please talk about it? You know what I mean? Like, it really was the most democratic thing. And I saw the interrogation, the transcript, and someone had recorded, and I think it was somebody called Venice Allen. I don't know who Venice Allen is.
I know she is. Oh yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know her personally. I met her once since, you know, she seems great. I think she's fantastic. But I just could tell from the interrogation, I was like, so I posted something on Facebook just to say, what the hell or what the F is going on in the Labour Party? And then I posted a transcript or something. And immediately I got this kind of insane pushback, not from everybody, but from a couple of people, one woman in particular called Lulu Nunn, who works for Cherie Blair, and who, it turned out, screenshots my comments where I was just saying, like, what the hell? Yeah. And then she started later on working with Luke Turner, and yeah, she organized it. She set up this fake, the people setting up these kind of fake grassroots campaign things. She set up one called Turfs Out of Art, which was
Turfs Out of Art.
Yeah.
Which and just to stop you for just 1 second, in case and people who watch this show, who our regular audience will know what this means. But of course, the TERF is the trans exclusionary radical feminist, which initially was a slur for women and first for women who didn't who weren't willing to pretend that a trans woman is a woman just like like I am. Okay, so you have women, and then you have men who, for whatever reason, want to be recognized as women, and the idea that that we're like, no, these are two different things and don't have a lot in common, really. That was taken as a huge offense, and the Gender Recognition Act back in 2018 was the idea that it should be easier for someone to have to change their gender legally. So it's about making it easier for a person to be recognized, so for a man to be recognized legally as a woman or vice versa.
Well, it was really about self-ID.
Yeah. Was it originally that, or did it become that?
That was part of the original discussion.
Okay. Because I thought it kind of evolved into that, but from the beginning it was self-ID. Okay.
Yeah.
So the idea that it should be a choice, that if a man decides that he's a woman, then that's good enough for the state, and then he becomes legally recognized as a woman, and then of course
no. So self-ID.
No? Okay, go ahead.
Self-ID is basically like you don't even have to have a piece of paper. It's just if you say you're.
Oh, okay. So no kind of. Oh, okay. So even more crazy.
Yeah.
Sorry. Allegedly. Yeah, that's my opinion. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So basically the idea that whoever that and again, actually, because when to bring up Nina Turner, she's a Democrat in the United States, even though the party treats her very badly. She also has blocked me online because someone was asking her like what a trans woman was, or what a woman was, when that was the big question, which is an insulting question to begin with, but that's where we were at. And she literally said, whoever says they are a woman is a woman. Now, and of course, anybody who thinks about that for a minute can realize that outside of your mind, this creates problems. But anyway, so Nina was one of the few, and there were others.
Yeah.
And I know a few people who really got, canceled because they kind of raised their hand up and were like, what?
Absolutely. And like lots of women before me were already very cancelled, and I came quite late really to this issue because I was busy working on stuff around protest and policing and court, like it wasn't my focus, right? I'd written this book on feminism in 2009 called One Dimensional Woman, but that was actually before all this stuff. And then around 2013 2014 some of this stuff was like coming in a bit, but it wasn't really my thing. I was just like, okay, whatever.
I mean, I don't know if you probably had the same experience when you're being gaslit, and people be like, well, why do you care? Or why are you so obsessed about trans people or all this stuff? And it's always the same thing. It's like, do you think this is what I want to be doing? And so many women, and not just women, but we're primarily that, are like, do you really think that we wanted to take the time to learn all about this. There's things I know that I wish I never knew.
I think the
There's
reality
so
is
much time wasted on
yeah,
this. On this
everybody
stuff. Yeah.
knows. Look, everybody knows the truth. Everybody knows what reality is. It's not actually really about that. What there is going on, I think, are several things. One of which is like the centering of a certain kind of male desire, and this is like a not all men question, but you know, if we're talking about, like, for example, a clash of rights, right? And a man in a dress says, I want the right to go into like the women's bathroom, and a woman says, well, actually, I want the right for you not to. Okay, like, you have a clash of rights, like very basic democratic, you know, negotiation. And democracy is got to be like the art of negotiating competing desires. And you might say, well, not everyone gets to be happy, and in fact, probably you won't be happy, but like we'll come to some arrangement, right? Like democracy is not about getting what you want. You know what I mean? It's not consumerism in that sense. But the recognition of the clash of rights is almost, you know, that's taken ages for people to say, okay, yeah, maybe there is maybe there are competing rights.
Well, and I would say there, and that's why, because they make people less and less reasonable or more and more dogmatic. And what I mean is that it's like, to me, I'm like, really? You show me where you get the right, where do you derive the right to be recognized as the opposite sex? You cannot, I'm sorry. There's, you can want that, you can desire that. But I also think that it was also this crazy, and I want to ask you, and I'm sure you probably saw the same thing, the language aspect of this, and you're more sensitive to this than I am. And I kept on saying, it's like, let's look at the work that these prefixes do. So, and people are like, oh, what's wrong with saying cis and trans? I'm like, well, because what it does is it presupposes that that the category of woman is open, and that there's two types of women. There's so-called cis women, so women, females, and then there's trans women, which are males who, for whatever reason, feel or want to be recognized as a woman. And but that's one thing, which is also already like, well, okay. But then with the kind of matrix of oppression, the trans woman is the oppressed and the cis woman is the oppressor, or just privileged because of heteronormativity, and she's actually female. And then when people buy into that, anytime a woman says something, all of a sudden, well, they're being mean, they're being, or misogynist. That's my favorite one. Or all this stuff. And it was just like, the language games, of course, what they have is playing on people's sympathy, ignorance, and language. Because this only works in language.
I mean, it's interesting that the cis thing doesn't seem to have worked. Like, people have dropped this a little while ago, to be honest. It's the whole... because I didn't think it was really taking on. Because the thing is, if you try to brute force artificial changes to language, they don't really work, because this is not how people speak. You know, and you can't really impose these categories. I mean, you can try to punish people if they don't say the right thing. You know, this is why laws against misgendering like exist in certain parts of the world, particularly bad places like Canada and so on. But yeah, I mean, look, the thing is, everybody knows what the truth is, and I think at this point,
we hope.
They do. Like, no, but the people who know it the most are the people trying to punish you for saying it. Like, this is, like, we have to realize this, and I think that
hey, Tony, there's a lot of noise coming from your direction. What's going on?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, but it actually, no, it sounds like there's like a microphone like that's being rubbed against something, is what it sounds like to me.
No, there's just cars driving by. But...
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Dina.
Yeah, how do I put it? And
the people that know, and they get upset when you challenge it. Yeah,
when people can't win an argument, right, because they can't win you over with reason, or, you know, they will try to use your fear and your emotion, right? So you correctly invoke the idea that this is... I think there's a lot of hijacking of natural sympathy going on, particularly in women. You know, because women are generally more, whether they're socialized or whether it's nature, they are generally more agreeable. They don't like being disliked. They want to be kind and helpful and nice and nurturing and caring. And these are all very good things, by the way. I'm not dismissing these virtues of these predispositions or orientations. These are beautiful, beautiful things. but they're very vulnerable to being hijacked. And I think this is what we've seen. And actually, a lot of what's going on, well, two things. And I'm not the main person who talks about this. There are many people who've researched this in much more depth than me. One of whom would be Jennifer Bilek. And there's
no, she's amazing.
You know, people who are trying to look at the really material economic reality of the transgender project as part of a broader transhumanist project, which involves big pharma, medicalization, you know, like the fantasy of the total transformation of the human body, this idea of the human body without limits. You know, this is a very dangerous.
Well, it's a constraint. And any constraint is bad. Right. And you need to clear that non-human boundary. And actually, just because I was just thinking about her, because I'm actually doing I'm trying to do a Substack on that, where I take her articles and I'm applying Jameson's notion of the vanishing mediator, how transgenderism is a vanishing mediator for transhumanism. But then, of course, the normal thing about that is that it's after the fact. So you have the 3 stages. And I'm saying, well, we can, you know, the third one about it diminishing and kind of going off into the ether is speculative. But in terms of it being an intermediary and the facilitation of it, I think that we're actually, with her work, is trying to, and other people trying to raise a red flag, like we still have time here to see where this is going. But anyway, so that I'm really into Jennifer at the moment because I'm using her articles to apply this.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of people doing great work. And the other aspect of this that people don't want to talk about because it's completely unpalatable is to do with pornography and the way in which, you know, particular kinds of pornography are basically reprogramming people's desire, you know, in a very serious way. Then this is being passed off as a kind of rights thing, you know.
Hold on. I have a question then. So, okay, so because you said this some many minutes ago about male desire, and then you just touched on desire right now. What exactly do you mean by these phenomena with trans and all this stuff in regards to male desire specifically? Can you touch upon that?
Yeah.
Do you want to do this, or do you want me to give him the lowdown? It's up to you.
Oh no, well, go ahead.
No, if you want to, because I'm just saying that. Okay, I'll give my spiel and then add what you want. There's 2 things. That there's a lady called Genevieve Gluck, and she's really done the God's work because she's been really going into the porn in the chat rooms with the so-called trans women or trans-identified males, what do you want to call them? And I don't know if you know the 2 brothers who are now sisters who wrote the Matrix movies. They've said that it was through this kind of sissy porn that they realized that, I guess they decided to go trans. And basically sissy porn is my understanding of it. I haven't watched it, thank God, but other people have and reported back. It's basically men are dressed up as women and they're very degraded. So any kind of degrading thing you can think about doing to a woman, they like to get maybe they're in schoolgirl things or housewife, and then they're degraded and that gets them off. And for some reason, they think that if they get off on the idea of themselves being a woman, be degraded, that somehow that means they're actually have this female or feminine gender identity. So that's one thing. Another thing is what they call autogynephilia, which was I think Ray Blanchard, who was a sexologist, I think came up with this many years ago before everything was politicized. And what he found out was that, or what he found out from a study, is that most people, I think, one of the reasons why a lot of people aren't too concerned about trans women entering women's spaces is because most people, I think, assume that trans women are very gay, effeminate men. And there is that group. There's also a group who are heterosexual males who they call autogynephilia, that get turned on or aroused by the idea of themselves as women, but they're not homosexual. They want to have sex with women as a woman. Yeah. And that these tend to be the people who transition later on. So that oftentimes they'll be married, they'll have kids, and they'll transition in their 40s or 50s or 60s or whatever. They decide they have to be the woman that they always wanted to be, or whatever the story is, their self-understanding. But a lot of it is we're being sold or being told that it's all this, a psychological thing. It's all gender dysphoria. It's this, and there could, I think that's an umbrella term for a lot of things about being uncomfortable with your sex body. But what Jennifer Bilek and other people and Genevieve Gluck and others want to say, a lot of this is what we would call kind of marginal sexualities or paraphilias or perversions that are getting repackaged as identities, as a rights issue. And so just kind of broaden it out. So I that's what I know about it.
So the fact that that's being done, that they're sort of centering in our civilization the sort of like these niche fetishes, these niche sexualities, these niche bizarre sexual desires. The fact that they're doing that speaks to what exactly? That they have some sort of agenda to sort of recreate. Because you were talking about the transhumanists, so is that what this is leading to? Is this an attempt to sort of socially engineer a type of human being that they can then control them reproductively?
Well, you know what? Let's put a bit of a pin in this because we're getting far off the cancellation, which is fine. But we want to finish this thing. But just the quick of it, we can come back to that later. Is that one of the things is that the face cases, if you will, of trans rights or human rights is the quote unquote trans kid and trans men. They're kind of like the human shields for what people would say what's driving this is these are largely the heterosexual so-called trans women, and the people that have the ones that have the most money and the access institutionally, legally, technologically. There's this group of really powerful, uber powerful AGPs. And the idea is that that's one of the reasons why we've seen this kind of stealth changes in the legislation and the norms about gender ID and all this type of thing. And so some people will say, oh, it's for the trans kids because, it's so terrible if they have to be in the whatever it is. And some people are saying, no, they would make the argument that that if your argument is that you always felt this way, that you quote unquote were born in the wrong body, then of course that means that you had to have been this way when you were a kid, and it would have been so much better for you if you had these fantastic, I'm being facetious, pharmaceutical and medical alternatives so that you could have not gone through puberty and it would have been easier for you to be the woman or the man inside you. And so it's kind of like this idea. So Billick would say, and other people would say, don't get waylaid about being overly sensitive to quote unquote trans kids, because they're being used as kind of the face case or the human shields, if you will, for a movement that has very little to do with that. And Billick and other people have made that argument. And but it doesn't get much attention, of course, because it's
it seems
taboo.
So it seems like if that's all the case, then it seems like then this becomes basically another facet of the bourgeoisie to control the population. Am I right? I mean that's
well, I don't know if I'd say bourgeoisie, but it's definitely there's a lot of capital to be made. So you have I don't know. I'll let Nina step in here now before we go back to the cancellation. And also not just to get into it to be like a salacious thing, but also what it says, outside of this particular case. But there's a huge amount of money to be made in body modifications, for lack of a better word, and and also fertility. Yeah. So Billick would argue, and I think this is true, that the end game is to kind of commodify, or what I would say proletarianize and commodify social reproduction, sexual reproduction. Yeah, and that transgenderism is a kind of a way, a mediator to get us comfortable with this, to kind of, for lack of a better word, groom. Yeah, because you get people to buy into that male and female is a social construction, and that pronouns and pharmaceutical and hormones and these crazy surgeries, what can't you get people to buy into? And there's a lot of money in it.
So it seems like then there's layers towards these phenomena and this sort of movement. So you have the upper layer, which you just described. And so my next question would be to Nina then. So do you think that, so let's say because it was supposed to be sociology of women class, but the woman, she was like a gender person and all this kind of stuff. The kind of person that Tara would despise.
Well, please. I would have some questions. Yeah. I'd be like, if she said she was non-binary, I'd be like, what, you can't code, or what does that mean? Then I would be like, tell me, because she could be quite smart. Go ahead.
I'm not a hater. Okay. So you have that sort of upper so you have that upper strata that is like sort of propagating this sort of transhumanist agenda, but then it seems like you have this middle strata of like people who, and this is just my opinion, that seem to have come to these ideas and come to these things because, and feel free to feel like you agree with this, from what I've observed in academia, and then also
Let's say it, babe.
as an artist as well, is that like I feel like, you know, the 21st century, you know, it's just stagnation. So there isn't a sense of, there isn't anything more that the sort of Western academia can sort of create anymore. So they've sort of like pigeonholed, you know, they're stuck in this sort of, you know, thing that just, okay, well, like they can't organically create anything anymore. So it's like, well, this is the lane that they've chosen to sort of, you know, that sort of academic caste has chosen to, you know, do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Navel gazing and focusing on the kind of this parsing out of ever more gender identities and sexualities and acting like
there is an inherent problem with progressivism, right? Because when does progressivism stop, right? Does anyone ever say, oh, well, actually we're doing pretty well quite now, and maybe there's going to be the odd problem with, like, you know, inequality and so on, but we can basically fix it, right? Like, we've basically kind of solved some of the civil rights issues, or like we're in a better place, right? But progressivism will never say that. Progressivism will always say there's new territory, there are new oppressions, like even to the extent of inventing them. You know, it's like, I'm going to invent myself to be an oppressed category. You know, like I'm a rich white man, but now I'm oppressed because I say I'm a woman. I mean, this project is so misogynistic. It's so commercial. It's so insane. It's so kind of
right. Yeah, because that to me speaks again, like, and this is something that me and Tara have talked about. I feel like this is the theme of all of our podcasts so far, and this is what I feel when I go to the, you know, university that I'm at and stuff like that, where basically the space in, you know, in Western civilization and our social fabric has become so confined that no one can create organically anymore. So this is the thing that, like, it's so stagnant. That's my point. Is like we're in such a state of stagnation that people like the professors, the academics, the people who go to the conferences, the people who write the articles, that they're in such a spatially stagnant zone that spatially that's what feeds it. Is that, like, you know, you got these people that live. Hold on, like, I don't mean to, but like you have these people that live in like the posh areas of the city. You know what I mean? They live like in the posh areas of LA. You know what I mean? So it's like, well, they're in such a spatially confined space of stagnation that to me is what feeds that. Do you feel like that's true? That spatially there's not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sorry.
there are way too many people in universities. There are way too many universities and colleges, right? Like, this is a big problem, and they've become very ideologically captured. They've become very, very detached from reality, and, you know, different people's actual lives. It's all about this kind of very ideological project, which, by the way, is completely compatible with neoliberal capitalism. Strangely, you know, this kind of increasing atomization, this increasing pressure on people to be individuals with their desires and their identities that somehow correspond to an awful lot of money and insurance and medicalization, you know, and this idea of abolishing the family. It's like, really? You want to make people yet more individuated, yet more alone, yet more without social ties? I mean, this is what capitalism has already done. Why do you want to, like, push the work of that project and pretend that this is some leftist liberation? Like, come on, guys, you're not fooling anyone. Like, you know, you are a big part of the problem.
Yeah, that's a good segue. And before we get on to the people on the abolishing family who are very interested. No, please, very interested in the Nina Power Pillory.
Yeah. Just to say, I'm not sure how much longer I can stay on because it's really quite late where I am, and I like normally go to bed like.
Okay, no, that's please. So I guess okay. So Tony and I can to carry on a bit, but I just want to a bit about I'll change this. I won't go totally on. But I'll fast forward through this.
Mhm.
So there's these two of the people, Sophie Lewis and Emmy O'Brien. Sophie Lewis is she wrote the book Abolish the Family, a manifesto for care and liberation. Okay. If you're all liberated, who's doing the care? But and Emmy O'Brien wrote something similar: family abolition, capitalism, and the communizing of care. Now, Emmy O'Brien refers to themselves as the trans woman, and Sophie Lewis is married to a trans woman, and is very much obviously into that whole thing. But you have been critical of this, and I read your article, and just to give people an idea.